Joining me now, the Lou Dobbs Tonight A-Team. Ellis Hennigan, he's Fox News political analyst. Bernard Whitman, former pollster for President Clinton and Mayor Bloomberg. And Chris Wilson, Republican strategist, let's see if I can say that word, strategist and pollster, former executive director of the Texas Republican Party. Good to have you all here. Ellis, let me begin with you. Let's start with the most recent developments, which is that there is a finding, an executive order by this president to commit covert forces to Libya 2 to 3 weeks ago. I thought no boots on the ground.
Maybe some sandals on the ground. How about that? Listen, one of the lessons of these engagements, Lou, is that they are always more complicated than you think they are, and that whatever you say on paper, you know, the enemy also gets a vote, and this will not end tomorrow.
As you listen to this, Bernard, I mean, you've got to be thinking complications. The rules are there for everyone to see. Why get involved? Did the president explain that adequately to you?
Well, frankly, I think a lot of questions remain, and you saw the president's job approval slip a bit in the Quinnipiac poll that was released today, and I think that's because a lot of people in this country still are unclear about why we're there, how long we're going to be there, how we're going to get out, and more importantly, I think there's been so much time and attention and money focused in recent weeks on the Middle East, whether it's Libya, the uprisings in Egypt, and the broader role of the United States in Afghanistan and Iraq. Meanwhile, we have so many problems in this country that are not being adequately dealt with.
So it's understandable that his ratings are at the lowest point of his presidency.
I think so, and I think my counsel to the president would be he's got to speak very clearly to independents and say, look, I understand we're dealing with a lot of challenges.
Surely you wouldn't think he'd be thinking of a campaign so early in his administration.
Well, I tell you.
Let me turn to Chris.
He ought to.
Chris, that poll has got to... well, it's got to make you smile just a bit there to see the president sliding in the midst of this. It's also got to worry you that there's no clear candidate in the Republican Party that suggests that he or she can beat this president, at least as it's now constructed.
Well, to address the Libya issue first, I think the greater concern is the fact that we seem to be letting our allies in Europe lead the way here, and I think any time that you have us taking the lead of France when it comes to intervention, it's got to scare pretty much everybody.
Who would you have lead us here, Chris? Let me ask you that question. Because, I mean, this is an administration that doesn't know who the enemy is, doesn't apparently know who the opposition is, doesn't apparently have an exit plan, and
well, that's
really
a greater concern. So I don't think there's any question our concerns are. I'd like to see our leadership here. I'd like to see this president step forward and provide a leadership role rather than following what France does. And let's face it, as sort of you were alluding to, our history in the Middle East in terms of arming interventionist actions is not that great. You look at the Mujahideen, you look at Iraq, and
I'm
I
with
think
you,
it's,
but I was asking you a political question, and I don't know where the Republicans are here. The Republicans are complaining about lead, not the way in which they, the lead up to this thing. What do you think?
Yeah, but
well, the challenge is we don't have the White House. You don't have the bully pulpit there to take a leadership role.
Chris, we've seen the dangers of unilateralism, and that didn't work out so well in the Bush administration when we paid all the costs, our guys did all the dying, and we couldn't leave. So now we're facing what are going to be the challenges of multilateralism. It's not simple. We have to figure out how to get along with our allies. But you know what? Maybe in the long run there is a model here that will allow us to not suffer so much as we try to exercise a little bit of will in the world. It does help.
Well, I'd like to make sure that model doesn't mean that we're supporting Al-Qaeda and trying to arm them as they go into our government. That's a really greater concern.
You know, Chris, come on. When the Republicans get back into a quarter, they point and say Al-Qaeda is here. I think the fact of the matter is 1 in 10 Americans want us to take the lead role here. So the fact that we are diminishing our role here and NATO is taking a primary position is exactly what the American people want. But having said
wait, 75% don't want us in there at all,
because we're coming back with the A-team here. You can have your final shots. By the way, what the American people want. It's good that we've got such divine knowledge of what the American people want here. An extra bonus here on Lou Dobbs Tonight. We're coming right back. We're back with the A-team. Chris, I want to turn to you. How does the impasse in Washington, the budget impasse, resolve?
Well, I think if there's one thing the last election proved, it's that voters want us to cut spending. They want us to get spending under control. And so from that standpoint, you've got the Republicans are pushing for $61 billion in cuts. I think the Democrats are going to have to come to the table and give it to them. I think in the end, the Republicans get most of that $61 billion in cuts. But the one thing I think is the biggest question here as we get back to talking about leadership, because you do have Republicans providing this leadership here, is where is Barack Obama? And President Obama seems to be content to let the Democrats in Congress do the heavy lifting here as he kind of stands on the sideline and cheers for a government shutdown. And I don't think that's the kind of leadership that's going to get anything done in the end.
3 quick predictions for you, Lou. The Republicans will get the number they want pretty much, but Democrats will mostly get the priorities they want. It'll be Republican programs that get cut. And finally, the government will not shut down. Neither one of these parties can afford it.
All right. Bernard, you in agreement?
Absolutely agree. The government's not going to shut down. But, Chris, actually what the voters said is they want compromise. And I'll tell you what compromise means. Compromise means that we've got to adopt the Simpson-Bowles recommendations. We've got to cut entitlement spending. We've got to raise the retirement age for Social Security. We've got to cut defense. Did you just say that
November 2nd was a mandate on
Yeah, I got to say, Bernard, I think we saw a different election result.
What I said was the election was not a mandate to cut spending. The election was to compromise. 80% of the American people want the parties to come together and compromise. Compromise, by definition, means the following: cut spending, cut entitlements, raise the retirement age, and end the Bush tax cuts for millionaires.
Here we go.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Bernard wants to raise taxes.
Alice, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it.